some, you've already talked about some, but maybe what are some other best practices that teachers should be, thinking about when we're talking about, again, digital equity and remote learning?
Yeah, Diane mentioned it a bit a moment ago, but I think getting rid of the busy work. A lot of districts, as you might imagine, as they were trying to find solutions to the equity gap as it pertains to technology and access, their knee-jerk reaction was to put together packets. Distribute these out to parents and the students, and then find some sort of way where their parents can drop the packets back off physically, so the students can have some measure of accountability for instruction. But really, if worksheets and graphic organizers and things of that nature have very minimal benefit to the student and to the learning experience. So I would say that this is, yet again, another opportunity for teachers to really push the needle a bit, to ensure that they're not just giving these kind of uniform assignments that are, to borrow a term, I'd say easily Googleable. They can just put the questions into a search engine and find the answer, kind of things, but really dig deep and put some level of rigor into the assignments that they're getting in front of their students. Also take, like I said earlier, taking into account the amount of time it might be for those assignments to come back, what's ample and ideal for students. Another best practice I would say is to use this as an opportunity to have some dialogue with your students. One of the best tools any teacher, any educator can have in their toolbox is a good rapport with your students. And that's something that will help you year over year, whether those kids are in your classroom or not. Inevitably, you're going to have a conversation where a colleague is asking you, what kind of things can I do with this one student? We all have had a student or that subset of students that have been a challenge for us. No fault of the students, just we have to refine our approaches. But wanting to know, how can I better engage the student that's in my classroom?
Another thing that I would like to bring up is that as we think about equitable practices, allow students to choose different ways to show what they've learned. And I brought it up before, but here's an example. Maybe a teacher has students read a few chapters in a book and wants a reflection or some sort of analysis of those chapters. Well, the teacher could have the student write a 2-page paper or whatever, hard to do on mom's phone, or maybe do something like Flip-A-Grid, where they could, press a button and do their video recording of their reaction, and then it's stored on the cloud very simply and easily. So allowing students to use the resources they have available to them. Again, another classroom best practice, but allowing that kind of self-agency for students to say, hey, I want to use these tools and I want to do that thing, I think helps a student take better charge of their learning. So it's not the teacher dictating things, it's also the student. Another thing that I've read as I've been kind of following up on what teachers are doing is someone said, well, in my district, we're not allowed to teach new things. And so this teacher is having students go back to their electronic or digital work and reflect upon that work and talk about, why did you come up with this idea? What were some hardships when you did this? What did you like best? If I had to do it again, what would I do? And I think, again, those are some self-agency techniques that are also life skills that our kids are going to need. Because what can I say? When we were in the classroom, maybe face-to-face, there was this push to just get assignments done. And maybe not attention was put toward quality. And now allowing time for quality and reflection and a few days to master some tasks is not a bad thing, right? So let's take advantage of this time.
If I could add one more thing to that, Diane, I often talk to teachers about this idea of embedded assessments. And I'll use analogies like video games, for example, where there are so many different measures of assessment for the player there, the scores are there, depending on the game, maybe there's a clock, a health bar, things like that, progression meters, and those things help the player stay engaged. In this time where you don't have that face-to-face component with your students, an embedded assessment will be a great resource for your students. And it doesn't have to be anything that's too involved, like the video game example. It could simply be a gallery of work that's been submitted and graded. You know, how often in our classrooms, you know, we can hand the work back or we can give students their grades, but they don't have an opportunity to compare what they did to what another student did to assess themselves versus their peers. But if you're using an online platform, whatever LMS, be that Google Classroom, Microsoft Teams, Schoology, what have you, you have an opportunity to really have your students grade at work with your feedback, you know, whatever grading looks like, if it's, you know, just the feedback even, and post that in a place where students can access not only their work, but another student's work, and then compare what they did to another student, say, oh, this looks really good, I should have done that, next time I'll know. Or, oh, I would never thought to use that tool, I'm gonna add that to my toolkit, I really wanna look up, see how they did that and recreate it. That's a great opportunity for learning as well. That again, something we don't often have opportunities to do in our class periods.
Other things that school districts can do, and I'm going to get geeky here, putting on my CTO hat. E-rate has allowed us to update and make more modern the infrastructures that we have in schools. A lot of us have purchased exterior access points that can or have been mounted outside and provide around a sports playing field perhaps, or a parking lot, the school network. And so I know that you know, this has taken place, those purchases have been made. I would encourage district leaders to find out where they have their external access points. And if they're in the middle of a football field, maybe see if you can put them near a parking lot so that kids could potentially have their parents drive them there and they use their car as their office, keeping their 6-foot distance. But, you know, this is where your car is your office, so that kids could get access. Using, hate to say it, but using the resources that we have, because there's not going to be a lot of new hardware coming out because of the resources available. And so it might end up being repurposing some things to make sure, you know, if you have an old phone, has it acted as a hotspot? Could you potentially, even though the phone part doesn't work, could you reactivate it as a hotspot for your devices to be on? You know, there are a lot of things like that that could be done as well.